You get used to patterns in radiology, not just in imaging, but in people. The anxious foot tappers, the ones who joke too much to hide their nerves. The quiet ones who nod through every instruction, like they're bracing for bad news. You see all kinds, but in trauma imaging, the patterns change. There's no time for conversation, no warning, no backstory, just urgency, pressure, and protocols. That night, I was assigned to the Trauma Bay CT suite. We're a mid-sized hospital in Tennessee, with a strong trauma program. We have one CT scanner reserved exclusively for trauma, G Revolution Evo, 128 slice. Fast, reliable, and paired with a dedicated team. Trauma surgeon, attending RT Connecticut Tech, and me, the radiology nurse. The patient came in by chopper, middle-aged male, blunt force abdominal trauma from a rollover crash, no seatbelt, alert but hypotensive in flight. The field team had already started 2 lines, bilateral 16 gauge. They'd given a liter of saline wide open, and a unit of ONEG. When he hit our doors, we didn't waste time, straight to trauma CT. I remember his name, Robert, 49 years old, blood pressure hanging at 82/50ths, heart rate in the 130s, drenched in sweat, still conscious, still speaking, kept asking if anyone else was hurt. We didn't know what he meant. His vehicle was the only one reported at the scene. We prepped him quickly. IV contrast protocol, bolus tracking engaged. I stood at his side, like I always do, monitoring vitals, reassuring, managing any reactions to contrast. Our tech, Evan, ran the console. The scanner clicked into life. Now here's the part I still think about. The scan triggered as normal. Head, chest, abdomen. I was focused on the monitor, watching his pressure dip a little. 79/48ths. I nudged in more fluids, stayed at his side, holding the line. Then Evan stopped. Midway through the scan he said, quietly, "We've got 2 heat sources." I thought he meant a bleed, maybe liver and splenic involvement. That's not rare. But he turned the monitor toward me. He had the thermal overlay on the scout image up, which isn't routine, but he uses it sometimes to double-check tissue perfusion patterns. On the abdominal slice, there were 2 heat signatures, one perfectly lined up with Robert, the other off-center, behind him. No anatomical correlation, no match to any structure, no artifact, just there. It pulsed faintly, like residual heat off a seatbelt buckle on a hot day. Except Robert had no one with him. EMS confirmed that, and he hadn't been belted. Evan adjusted the windowing. The second signature began to fade, like it was cooling rapidly. No motion, no spread. It just shrank. Gone by the time we reached the pelvic slice. We didn't speak right away. There's an unspoken rule in trauma radiology. Stick to the clinical, save the theories for later. But Evan printed a screen capture of that scan, and quietly placed it in the query bin, for the attending radiologist to review. I stayed with Robert through the post-contrast phase. He was still conscious but growing pale. Whispered again, "She was just here." I asked, "Who?" He looked confused. "My daughter. She was in the back seat." The trauma surgeon walked in as I froze. "Scene reports say he was alone," he said, almost automatically. "Only one occupant, one set of prints on the wheel." Robert's heart rate spiked, then plummeted. We lost pulses during transport to the OR. The team called a code blue. I ran with them to the surgical suite, helping bag him while we compressed. But the bleed had been massive. Liver laceration. He coded twice in the OR. Never made it off the table. That image stayed in the query bin for 2 days. The radiologist marked it as unidentified thermal artifact. Nothing further. It never made the final report. 2 weeks later, a woman came to the front desk. Said she was Robert's ex-wife. She'd come to collect his belongings. She asked one question that still rings in my ears. "Did he say anything about our daughter?" I said nothing at first. I wasn't even sure I was allowed to speak. She said she passed 5 years ago. Car accident. Back seat. He always blamed himself. Then she looked down at the bag in her hands. His wallet, belt, cell phone, and added quietly, "He used to talk about feeling her near him, always in the back seat. Said he could feel her warmth." I stayed late that night. Not to process scans, just to think. Sometimes radiology is clear-cut. Lesions, fractures, bleeds, tumors. Things we can label, treat, chart. Other times, it raises questions no one wants to answer. We don't always know what we're looking at, but sometimes something's looking back. Hello friends, and thank you so much for tuning in. A special shout out to our incredible subscribers. Your support keeps these creepy, fascinating, and sometimes even comforting stories alive. But here's something to think about. Only about 30% of our viewers are subscribed. If you enjoy our content, hitting that subscribe button helps more than you might realize. It only takes a second, but it makes a world of difference. While you're at it, a like and share go a long way in keeping these eerie tales coming. Thank you again for being part of this journey. You're the reason we're here. See you in the next one, if you dare. MRI after-hours shifts aren't like the rest of the hospital. They're quieter, but not in a peaceful way. They hum. Most people don't realize how loud an MRI scanner is. That rhythmic thumping, the way it pulses through the room, it never really leaves your head. Even after the patient's gone, you can still feel the echo in your chest. That's why we rotate staff. No one should be in there too long without a break. Our MRI suite runs 2 scanners, Siemens 1.5, T-Magnetum Era, and a newer 3T unit. We're a regional hospital in Michigan. Not too big, but we handle a steady stream of neuro, spine, and joint studies. I work nights, mostly. Outpatients during the day. Inpatients and emergent neuro work after dark. This happened on a Thursday, cold night, light snow, end of January. I remember because we were behind on scans from the ED. CT had overflow, so they pushed a couple suspected strokes to us. 2 patients in their 70s, both intubated, both time sensitive. We were moving fast. It was about 1:30 a.m. I'd just finished clearing the scanner from a stroke protocol when one of our newer techs, Alex, stepped into control. He looked pale, visibly shaken. He asked, "Is there a psych patient scheduled?" I said, "Not tonight." "Why?" He looked back toward the hallway window and said, "There's a girl out there. She's wearing a hospital gown, keeps peeking around the corner into the suite." I walked out to check. The waiting room lights were dim. Automatic timers cut power after midnight, but still bright enough to see movement. No one there. Hallway doors locked. I used my badge to scan out, just to be sure. Nothing. I even checked with security. No patients reported missing. No elopements. No late arrivals. We chalked it up to fatigue. MRI staff get visually burned out easily. Those long scans with static images can mess with your depth perception. I told Alex to sit and rest while I prepped the next patient. But an hour later, he froze again. Mid-sequence, said, "She's back." I stood next to him this time. He pointed toward the left panel of the door, glass, but partially obscured by privacy frosting. He said, "She's standing right there." I saw nothing. No silhouette. No shadow. But I believed he saw something. His voice had dropped. His hands trembled slightly, and I could hear his breath catch. I decided to review the security feed. The MRI suite has a motion-activated camera in the outer corridor, standard hospital safety. I pulled the footage for the last 3 hours. Every frame showed that hallway. No one walked in. No one leaned in. No one opened the door. Not once. I slowed the playback. At 1:29 a.m., right when Alex first reported her, the door never moved. There was no badge swipe, no motion trigger. But Alex was on camera. He stood and stared directly at the door like he was tracking someone. Something. I went frame by frame. Nothing but silence and timestamp overlays. I didn't say anything then. Didn't want to escalate his stress. Just told him to go to break room, grab a snack, reset. I finished the rest of the night's scans alone. The thing is, we have a list in radiology, not an official one. Just among staff. We call them the strays. Images that don't match anatomy. Sounds you hear on patient audio when no one speaks. The time a pediatric patient pointed to the control room glass and said, "She's crying again." We don't report them. You can't chart what you can't prove. 3 weeks after that night, I stayed late to help calibrate the 3T. New software update from Siemens. Took longer than expected. I was alone in the suite, running phantom scans, test coils, standard QA. I felt it, not cold, not static, but watched. I turned to the door. For just a moment, I saw a small shape about shoulder height to a child, step back behind the glass. I opened the door immediately. Nothing. But on the bench in the hallway was a single patient wristband. Scanned, labeled, smudged, no name, just a faded MRN, long deactivated in the system. I reported it. Security shrugged it off. Probably dropped from a laundry bag. Probably, but I still keep it. Tucked in the back of my locker. Because in radiology, we image the body, but sometimes, something looks back. Hospitals are full of elevators, but not all elevators are created equal. Visitors use the main ones, bright, slow, piped with music. ICU has its own lift. So does the OR. But the service elevator? That's our lane. Staff only, no decorations, just stainless steel, a dull rattle, and buttons with labels half rubbed off from constant use. Radiology is in the basement at our facility. Lower level, right next to central supply and morgue access. That's where they built the original scanner suite back in the late 80s. Over time they added new ones, CT, MRI, nuclear medicine, but the bones of the place are still old. You can feel it in the tile, you can smell it in the walls when the dehumidifiers cut out. That night, I was covering second shift, Friday. I remember because the inpatient load was heavy. Orthopedic post-ops, abdominal CTs, a couple portable chest x-rays. We had to confirm before discharge. I'd just finished assisting a contrast CT on a patient who came in for severe RUQ pain. Turns out it was a perforated gallbladder. Stat surgery. We wrapped that case around 11:40 p.m. I walked down to the laundry chute area, where our portable scanner batteries are docked, to check if the one we'd used earlier had finished charging. I ran into Ava, one of our CT techs, solid, experienced, no nonsense. We started around the same time, almost 10 years back. She said she was heading up to MedSurg 3 to retrieve a patient scheduled for an abdominal scan, and asked if I could stay and prep the suite. No problem. About 15 minutes later, she radioed in. "You still in scan room 2? I replied, "Yeah. Just finishing wipe down. Everything okay?" She didn't answer for a few seconds, then said, very flatly, "Someone was behind me in the elevator." I thought maybe she meant a patient, or a staffer she didn't recognize. I asked, "Like someone you didn't expect?" "No," she said. "Someone who wasn't there." Now this is Ava we're talking about, calm under pressure. The kind of tech who keeps a level head, even when you're pulling a trauma code in 2 languages. She doesn't talk like that, ever. She said she took the service elevator like we always do, basement to MedSurg 3, key card access. No one else scanned in. She rode up alone. She checked, watched the doors close. But when the elevator reached the second floor just before 3, the lights flickered. Not out, just a soft dim, like the hospital switched to generator mode. That can happen during grid transitions. Normal. What wasn't normal was the reflection in the elevator's back wall. Steel walls in that elevator act like a mirror. Warped, sure, but reflective enough to see your own face, your ID badge, your scrubs. She swore there was someone standing behind her, not beside, not shoulder to shoulder like a normal ride. Directly behind her, centered like shadowing her movement. She turned around. No one. The elevator stopped at 3. She got out, wheeled the patient back in silence. Didn't speak again until she reached the scanner bay. I believed her. You just do when someone talks like that, with that kind of stillness in their voice. Later that night, I reviewed the elevator logs. We're required to. HIPAA, safety compliance, you name it. The door log showed Ava's card scan at 11:56 p.m. No other badge triggered that elevator for the next 22 minutes. Security footage doesn't cover the inside of the service elevator. It's a privacy measure. Patients are sometimes transported that way. So there's no visual record of what she saw. But I know that elevator. I've ridden it 1,000 times, sometimes twice in a single shift. And once, maybe a year before that night, I thought I heard breathing behind me. Soft, close, right at the base of my neck. When I turned, there was no one. Just me, my reflection, and that stainless steel wall. I told myself I was imagining it. But the next morning, one of the housekeeping staff told us the elevator had stalled for 40 minutes after we clocked out. Maintenance said it just stopped. No power surge, no mechanical fault. Doors locked tight, mid-floor, like it didn't want to open. They reset the panel. It worked fine the next day. The hospital never sent a memo. No one made a big deal of it. But since then, a few of us take the stairs when we can. Because in hospitals things linger. Not ghosts, not spirits, just impressions. Moments that don't leave. Shadows that don't match bodies. And reflections that don't always belong to you. You learn early in radiology to trust your environment, not your instincts, not your gut, your environment. Because everything in our world runs on precision, timing, shielding, dosage, imaging parameters. And the control room? That's your safe zone. That's where you manage the chaos from the other side of the glass. Took it. Lead glass. 2 inches thick, shielded for radiation. Transparent, but dense. Nothing gets through that isn't supposed to. Which is why this stuck with all of us. It started with Kayla, one of our MRI techs. Seasoned, worked nights by choice. She was scanning a lumbar spine on a young construction worker. Standard protocol. No sedation, no contrast. Just a routine 45-minute scan with T1, T2 and stare sequences. During the second sequence, she glanced at the control room glass. She said she saw something move behind her. Not outside, not in the scan room. Behind her, in the control room. She looked over her shoulder. Nothing. But when she turned back to the glass, it happened again. Just a flicker of movement. A human-shaped shadow passing behind her reflection. She finished the scan. Didn't say anything. That was how most of these started. Quiet, shrugged off, one-offs. Until it happened again. Then again, 3 different techs, 3 different nights. All scanning solo, all with full access to badge logs that showed no one else in the room. One described it as a silhouette with no depth, like someone pacing behind the lead glass, but without any of the details you'd expect. No color, no texture, just motion. Another thought, it might have been a prank. She stayed late and checked every entry point, even reviewed badge access history with security. There were no unauthorized entries, no badge pings, nothing. We checked lighting, couldn't replicate it. Checked screensaver reflections, still nothing. One of the techs ran a phantom scan and stared at the glass for an hour. Nothing moved, until the following week. We were running a full overnight neuro study, mid-shift, long protocol. The patient was stable but anxious, so I was in the control room, talking them through it over the intercom. It was just me and Evan, the tech on console. I saw it out of the corner of my eye first, something moving in the glass, a blur behind Evan's shoulder. I thought it was a coat shifting, or a rolling chair turning. But when I looked, Evan hadn't moved. The chair was still, and I realized we didn't have anything hanging behind us. Nothing that could cast a shadow. Still, I didn't say a word, until Evan quietly said, without turning, "You saw it too, didn't you?" I nodded. He kept staring at the screen. Neither of us mentioned it again. But here's the thing. You can train your eyes to ignore fatigue. You can blame reflections. You can blame stress, shift work, too much caffeine. But when 4 different techs, on 4 different shifts, see the same thing, in the same place, doing the same slow movement behind the glass, you start keeping records. Not official ones, just notes, quiet ones. And then you hear about what used to be in this room. Before it was MRI, this space was general X-ray. Back in the late 80s, before PACS systems and electronic order sets, films hung on racks, everything was physical. The shielding was installed before the remodel, and the lead glass is original. The techs who worked here back then, they lost someone, massive stroke, right in the control room. Male tech, alone on night shift, collapsed between scans. By the time anyone found him, he was gone. They kept the room closed for 2 weeks. No plaque, no ceremony, just cleaned up and carried on. I don't believe in ghosts, not officially, but I believe in patterns. I believe when people who don't talk about these things, people trained to measure everything, calculate everything, document everything, start saying the same thing, quietly, hesitantly, in the same words, then maybe, not everything we shield against is physical. And maybe, some things leave an impression, not on film, not on the machine, but on the space itself. Thank you so much for watching and being part of this growing community. Your support means the world to us, and it's what keeps these creepy, fascinating, and sometimes comforting stories alive. We'd love to hear from you. If you've experienced something eerie, unexplained, or deeply moving, feel free to share your own story in the comments below. You never know, your story might be the next one featured. And if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to help keep the chills coming. We couldn't do this without you. See you in the next one.